Hey everybody, been a while since we talked to you, but we've been working really hard on this new tool called Angler, and it's the kind of thing that you start working on something and then you add a couple of things here and there, and then say, "Oh, it'd be pretty cool if we could do this," and "What if we did that?" And anyway, it just kind of blows up into a giant project, and that's where we've been with this over the last few months. But we wanted to make sure that it was as good as it could be, and we're getting really close to the finish line there, and that will be ready hopefully in a week or so. But in the meantime, wanted to share with you this tool that we've just added to BirdDog that's taking advantage of some of that angler information. So if you're a Betmix subscriber or you're looking at the free race of the day in BirdDog, you can find Angler by clicking on the options button and then going down to click on AnglerAnalysis, and that'll pop it into your BirdDog screen. It'll add that widget. When you see this Angler widget added, what you need to do is click the Analyze button, and it's going to go out. In some cases, it's going to take a while to grab this data. There's a ton of stuff that it's got to go query, and then it's going to take, on in general, I'd say 10 to 15 seconds, depending on how many horses are in the race, to come back and load up all these tables. But the data that you're going to get back is worth the wait. So it's popped in here now, and let me zoom in a little bit to give you a better look at this. All right, so we'll make that full screen. So what we're doing here is we're grabbing a bunch of information about every single horse in the race, and we'll start off looking at this horse stats table at the top. And what it's telling you here is that over the last 2 years, it's giving you a lot of information about each horse in this race. And you can sort any of these columns. So we'll sort it by program number, and we'll look at this first horse, Favorite Coach. You can see he's been in 19 races. And the idea here is to give you some kind of sense of how well have these horses performed from the standpoint of betting on them. If I'd have bet every horse or every race that this horse has been in, I bet 2 to 1 on him, I would have made a profit of $27.40. Across the board, win, place, and show, this horse has been profitable. He wins 21% of the time, places 53% of the time, and hits the board 68% of the time. On average, he finishes 2.95, so on average he finishes about third. When he runs, his average odds are about 7.97 to 1, and when he wins, he's about 7.1 to 1. Now, this is the kind of thing you're going to look at. You're going to say, well, what is this? Why do I care? Well, certain horses are good bets and certain horses are bad bets, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Sometimes a horse may look like a great bet because he's got a high win ROI, and that may just be because one time he won a race at big odds and that inflated his win ROI. It could be because the owners and the trainers of these horses know how to spot them. They put them in the right races, and they always tend to hit the board and return some money. So you can analyze this a lot of different ways. If you click on a horse, we'll click on Favorite Coach, it'll pop up a table that shows you every race he's been in and break it down by odds. So at the top here, we're looking at odds between 0 and 1. So big favorites, when he's been up to even money, up to and including even money, and that's happened one time that he's been that kind of a price. And when it was, he ran second. Now if you go down here to 15 plus, that means his odds were 15 to 1 or greater. That's happened 3 times. He won one of those races, he ran second in one of those races, and ran third, or actually ran sixth one time. So when you start looking at this table, you'll get an idea of where a horse typically wins. Now this horse, Favorite Coach, he wins or hits the board at all different odds ranges. 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 4 to 1, 5 to 1, 9 to 1, 10 to 1. He has been a horse that, regardless of odds, can hit the board anywhere. Now when you look at another horse, this is a horse that when he's up here, you'll see the types of ranges that they typically win in. Some horses are only going to hit the board when they're one of the favorites. When they're a higher price, they're probably not a good bet. So you're going to have to, when you have picked a horse, you want to come over here find it within this table, click on it, and ask yourself, based on the odds that it's currently running, is this the type of odds range that this horse does well in? Now the second table down here is looking at just this race type. So this, we're in this table, we're looking at everything the horse has done over the last 2 years. Down here we're looking at just 6 furlong dirt claiming races, or whatever particular race you're looking at. Is just focusing on that type. And you'll see some horses may appear to be very bad bets in general up here, but when you get down to the specific race type that they're in today, they may look like a better bet, or vice versa. So keep that in mind. Now you have the next table is owner stats. And you may be asking yourself, what does the owner have to do with anything? And that's a good question, but we've found some interesting stuff here. Some owners typically win are winners in terms of what they return to people that bet on their horses, and other owners typically do not return a profit. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of them may apply to certain owners, and some of them may not. An owner may pop up and look like a great bet because they always win money, but that could be because they've had a couple of huge long shots that have come in to kind of inflate those prices. But if you've been around the racetrack, you'll know that there's certain owners that take a very active role in the management of their stable. They're looking at the condition books, and they're kind of involved in spotting their horses and which races to enter. They have great relationships with the trainer. They talk to him frequently. They may be the kind of owner that gets very angry when they lose, and they may the trainer may feel a certain amount of pressure to make sure that they're not embarrassed. And these are very general reasons, and it may not apply all the time. But you may have other groups of owners that don't get that involved. They pay their bill, they're happy to be at the racetrack, they're there to have a good time with their friends. Win or lose, they're okay. They're not going to chew the trainer out when they run poorly. They may believe any excuse that they hear for why the horse didn't run well. So there's a lot of stuff that comes into play when you start looking at horses or trainers that show a betting profit overall versus owners that don't. And it's very interesting when you start looking at a lot of these races. You'll come across horses that win, and it lines up a lot with owners that win, and vice versa. Owners that lose or return very little profit to people that bet on the horses versus those that show a big profit. Now you can sort this by win percent, place percent, show percent. All the same kind of table information is in or column information is in each table. And then finally you get the trainer stats. So this is also based on this race type, not in general, but this race type. Jockey stats, sire stats. So how when looking at this particular race type here, and we sort by win percentage, Munnings has the highest win percent at 23%, and Giacomo down here at the bottom at 11. And in terms of who's returning money, or which horses win the most or return the most money when you bet on them, you got Not for Love and Noble Causeway, who have shown a flat bet profit in this race type over the last 2 years. Down here you have post analysis. This is looking at the post, not the program number, but the post. Post 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Is there a bias in here? And you can determine that by looking at the average finish. And why is it that post 8 and 6 have returned a profit and these others have not? Again, it could simply be because there's been a few long shots that have won from these positions. When you look at the average finish position, the 6 on average is at 3.15. And when you start looking at the outside post, 9, 10 plus, it's 5th and 6th. So certainly the outside horses are performing poorly compared to the horses coming out of the middle of the track. And then finally we got the odds analysis table. When you look at the odds range payouts for a particular race, you can find some interesting stuff. And let's look at it. Let's just sort it by odds up here. So we're looking at horses that went off between 0 and 1, big favorites, and then at the bottom you have 15 plus. So odds of 15 to 1 or higher. And then you look at the average finish, and this is pretty linear. You would expect that horses that are heavy favorites are going to have a better average finish than horses that are long shots, and that typically holds true. Now you'll see some anomalies here. So the big favorites on average finish 1.75, and it should go up gradually all the way to the bottom. But then you see something down here that kind of stands out, that horses that are between 4 and 5 to 1 are actually finishing better in this race type than horses that are between 3 and 4 to 1. And we don't have an enormous amount of data here, so that can be explained by the limited data set for this particular race type. But what you want to focus on here, and there's the psychology of betting on horses comes into play in this. And as we all know, there's a favorite bias and there's a long shot bias. And what that means is that there's a lot of people that when they're betting on a race, they're going to bet on the favorite because that's the horse that's got the best chance to win, they think. So that they're biased towards betting on the favorite. And then there's a whole other group of people that say, I'm not betting on the favorite. I'm not taking 3 to 5. I want to bet on a higher priced horse. So they'll bet on horses that are long shots in their mind because the payouts are going to be much better. And you see that now more than clearly illustrated in a race like the Kentucky Derby, where you have 20 horses in the race, and just because of horses like Mine That Bird and Giacomo and things like that won at big prices, now everybody thinks, well, long shots are going to win the Derby. So in a 20 horse race, you should have several horses that are 100 to 1 or better. But the reality of it is, in the Kentucky Derby now, a long shot might be 40, 50 to 1, even though it should really be 200 to 1. And so you got this bias of everybody wanting to bet on a long shot versus a horse that's more than likely going to win. So when you look at this table, you can start looking or start deciphering the odds range that typically wins. So if you're looking at this race type, you can see if we sort it by win ROI, horses in the 4 to 1 to 5 to 1 range have returned the most profit. The worst profit has been the long shots, and then the second worst has been horses in the 3 to 1 to 4 to 1 range. So when you've handicapped the race, and I can't stress this enough, you need to handicap the race first, with your mix or using the overall rankings or the consensus picks or however you typically would handicap a race within Betmix before you look at this table. You don't want these tables to influence how you're betting. You want them to confirm what you've selected. You want them to reinforce what you've picked, or to kind of maybe talk you out of what you've picked. So it's not. I don't think it's the right approach to come in here and say, I'm only going to bet on horses that are 4 to 5 to 1, or 9 to 1, or 10 to 1, 10 to 1 to 11 to 1. Those are the types of horses I'm going to focus on, and then work backwards. You want to pick your horses first, and then come over here and kind of look at these tables, and get a broad overall picture of, is my horse typically going to pay well? If he's 8 to 1 right now, has he ever run at that odds range before? And if he has, how's he done? If he's a favorite, how's he done? You don't want to just look at this and base your selections solely on the results of these tables. Now if you went through here and you sorted all these by win ROI, and you had the same horse on top in every one of these categories, then I'm assuming that horse would also probably be the favorite in the race anyway. But use this information to kind of back up what you've selected and to drill down a little bit deeper, and help you kind of get a better picture of the overall abilities and trends for the race, rather than just using this first to make your pick. I think when you start doing that, it's going to make you a lot more successful as a handicapper. Now I'm going to talk real quickly about Angler, where all this stuff is coming from. All this data is being pulled out of this database called Angler that we have. And let me refresh this over here. This is what Angler is going to look like. For the most part, we're going to probably polish it up a little bit, make it a little bit more user friendly, but this is basically the interface that you're going to see. And this is kind of on its surface, you're looking at this right now, you're probably saying way too complicated. And for some of you it may be. But I think if you play with it a little bit when it comes out, you'll see that it's not all that difficult. There's just a lot of information here because there's so much you can do with it. You can literally, or you can almost ask any possible question that you have and get an answer to it. So let's to start off, you would select a date range. Let's say we'll go back 2 years from today. So that's we'll say 7/7/2014 through 7/7/2016. And then you can pick a race track. We'll say all tracks for right now. A surface, we'll say dirt, and then a distance, and you can pick a range here. You could say between 5 furlongs and 7 furlongs, or between 8.5 furlongs and 9.5, but we'll say exactly 6. And each time you add a condition over here, you'll see it pop up in your settings. So now we've got a date range of last 2 years, dirt tracks, distance exactly 6 furlongs, and then we'll come down here and say claiming, because that's the most common race type, is 6 furlong dirt claiming races. And now we'll add some information about the types of horses. So let's say that of all these horses that have run in 6 furlong dirt claiming races over the last 2 years, we only want to look at horses that were ranked first in speed last race. Again, you can do a range. You can say horses ranked between 3rd and 9th, or 5th and 7th, or whatever, but we'll say just first. So you can see that that's popped in here. Speed last race must be exactly first, and we'll add one more condition just to kind of limit this. We'll say average of last 3 E1 pace must be first. So that's our condition. That's the question we want to ask. We want to say, how often do horses in 6 furlong dirt claiming races who were ranked first in speed last race and first in average of last 3 E1 pace, how often do they win? And we'll hit the start search, and we'll get an answer here in a second. Alright, so here's the answer. There's been 1,853 horses that have met those criteria. And 33% of the time they've won. So 614 out of those 1,853 horses have won, and 66% of the time they've hit the board. And what we're trying to get to, what we're trying to help you with to make you better handicappers, is to get these kind of questions answered and kind of summed up in your mind. If you've ever watched one of these poker tournaments on TV, it's pretty neat where they show the whole cards, and you can see that one guy's got a pair of aces and the other guy's got an ace king, and they show you right away the percentages. And those are easy to figure out in cards because it's just pure math right there. You've got the percentage chances of drawing another card. So this guy's got a 52% chance of winning and this guy's got a 48% chance of winning. So you've got that information right at your fingertips. If you're a good poker player, you know those things backwards and forwards. You know how often a pair of aces is going to win, or you know how often what percentage chance you have of drawing a flush on if you've got 2 cards you need to get a flush, how often are you going to draw that out? And so we want to kind of give you that same kind of information for horse racing. So now in a 6 furlong dirt race, that if you've got the best speed last race and the best average last 3 E1 pace, in general you're going to win 33% of the time. And 33% chance equates to about 2 to 1 on the odds boards. So if you're looking at a race and you see a horse that's got the best speed last race and the best average last 3 E1 pace, and he's going off at better than 2 to 1, that's a pretty fair wager because he's got a 33% chance of winning. The other neat thing you can do with this is scroll down here and see by track how this holds up. So let's look at the win percent, or the ROI by track. When I sort it this way, in general up here, overall it's not a great bet because it's a negative $573 return. But at certain tracks it's a better bet than others. At the top here's Woodbine, and then you have Laurel and Thistledown, and then down at the very bottom you have Golden Gate, Delaware, Mountaineer, where it's not a good bet. And that may be because these horses tend to get way over bet at those tracks. Maybe Golden Gate has very small fields, and so when these horses pop up, maybe they're getting bet to the extent that they're 3 to 5 shots. And since we know that that's about a 33% chance, or it should be about a 2 to 1 horse, just based on that information alone, maybe they're getting way over bet. So let's say, all right, we like this angle now, but we only like it at Woodbine and Laurel. So we're gonna change the track filter here, and we're gonna say only Woodbine and where's Laurel? Laurel. And we'll run that search again. So now it's just limiting it to Woodbine and Laurel. We see that it's a profitable overall. Now you have 46% winners at Woodbine and Laurel under those conditions. If I like that angle, I'm going to save it, and I'll call it a good bet. And I'm going to save it. And the idea here is I would run that angle against today's date. So let me change the date to today. So it's now just looking at July 8th, and I'd hit start search, and unfortunately there's none of those horses running today at Woodbine or Laurel. So that's an example of a basic angle. That's pretty simple. But this let me hit refresh up here and start over again. This it can get very complicated, and you can look for very specific things. You can say horses that are coming. Last race must have been a claiming race, and this race must be an allowance race. So now we're saying coming out of a claiming race into an allowance race. And their last finish, they were between first and third, and they, any one of the 45 factors that we have, you can put all that in there. So we're gonna write a very extensive help document with almost like a book to be able to help you use this thing, because on the amount of stuff that you can add to it is quite extensive. Down here, let me load that last angle we did. What was it? A good bet. Here it is. And we'll run it, and I'll show you a couple other things real quick, and we'll end this video because it's getting longer than I'd wanted it to be. But anyway, here's that particular angle for Woodbine and Laurel, and then well, look, if you click the Analyze button, this is pretty neat. It's going to go up here and tell you, well, first of all, this is 6 furlong, dirt, and claiming. So we already knew that within our query, but it tells you within each one of these factors where the horses were ranked. So if I came back here and said, all right, well, now I only want to look at winners, so I would say finish in the current race is first. So all of these horses, we know that there was 32 of the 69 that won. So if I run the query again, now it's going to limit it to just those 32 horses. So all those, what did all those winners have in common? I'll click the Analyze button, and I can see here where those winners rank within particular categories. And it's interesting here that of those 32 winners over here, 8, 10, 4, so 22 of them are ranked between first and third and last turn time. So you can kind of use this to further refine your original query and start eliminating things that may not matter. Or look here that horses that were days since last race was way over here, so you didn't want to be ranked first. Very few of them were ranked first, second, or third in days since last race, but a lot of them were ranked very highly in win percentage. You can see how that scales down, so you can use this to refine it. Also at the bottom, every one of those races will show up in this table, and you can click any one of those races and go and bird dog and open it up. You can also add any column you want to this table. I can come down here and pretty much every factor, every condition that you can think of, we can add to that table. So whoops, right now we're looking at this basic table right here, but let's say I want to add in a bunch of columns. I'll add in the track condition, I'll put that over here, and who the owner is, and did they run a bullet last race. I'll put that in there and I'll run it, and you'll see that all that information down here is going to pop up. Now you got bullets, so if they did run a bullet, it's a 1. If they didn't, it's a 0. Who was the owner? What the track condition was, good, fast, muddy, whatever. So you can add as many of these columns as you want here to help you analyze this angle that you've created. So that's kind of just really touching on what Angler can do, and I think you get the idea of how powerful it can be when it's all when you use it to research a horse. You can get really detailed. You can go in and find a particular horse that you're getting ready to bet on, and you can say, well, he's ranked first in speed last race, and he's ranked fifth in last E2 pace, and he's got the third best jockey of the meet and the best trainer of the year. And you can put in all those situational factors and run a query, and then find out how often that's happened before and what are the percentage chances of that. So you can use this tool in a very broad sense to find just general statistical averages for how often those types of horses win, or you can kind of tailor it to a specific horse that you're getting ready to bet on to see how, based on its abilities, how often that has occurred in the past. And the more refined you get, when you start putting in multiple factors, it's going to really reduce the result set, but you can get some idea of how often that happens at a particular race type. So this thing it's going to be really great, and we're going to pull out a lot of this automatically for you. And the first example of that is the AnglerAnalysis, where it goes and runs all these queries for you, but on your own you can create as many as you want, ask any question you can think of, and get a statistical answer for it, and then go find those races in the future. So that's going to be probably a week or two before this is completely finished and out. And I just want to reiterate here, if you read the email earlier, if you're a current subscriber to Betmix, you're going to get this as part of your current subscription rate. But starting in about August 1st or somewhere thereabouts, we're going to have a new level, a new subscription level called Betmix Pro, and you'll have to have that level to get Angler. So if you're already a Betmix customer, you don't have to worry about anything. As long as you stay a Betmix customer, you're going to get all this stuff at the same price you're paying right now. But if you leave and come back some point in the future, or you just decide to join up at some point in the future, then you're going to have to pay a little bit more to get access to Angler. And I'm not sure what that's going to be yet, but it's still going to be a bargain, because this is going to be the most comprehensive handicapping tool that's out there. And so it's going to be well worth the price. But just know that if you're currently a subscriber, you don't have to worry about anything. You're going to get all this stuff included as part of what you get right now. So that's it. This went on a lot longer than I had hoped, as usual, but here we go. If this will be out in a couple weeks. If you have any questions in the meantime, be sure to let us know. And if you're just curious and we have the time, if you want to suggest or if you want to know the answer to a particular question, just email me and I'll try to get you the answer. If you want to know how often horses that are running in post position 1, who are coming out of a claiming race at Woodbine, who are, whatever you can think of, shoot me an email. I'll try to give you an answer. And until this is ready, we'll help you out as much as we can. Thanks. Bye.